Okay, the scripture lesson from today is taken from Matthew chapter 2, verses 13 to 23. The escape to Egypt. When they had gone, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. "Get up," he said. "Take the child and his mother and escape to Egypt. Stay there until I tell you, for Herod is going to search for the child to kill him." So he got up, took the child and his mother during the night, and left for Egypt, where he stayed until the death of Herod. And so was fulfilled what the Lord had said through the prophet, "Out of Egypt I called my son." When Herod realized that he had been outwitted by the Magi, he was furious, and he gave orders to kill all the boys in Bethlehem and its vicinity who were 2 years old and under, in accordance with the time he had learned from the Magi. Then what was said through the prophet Jeremiah was fulfilled. "A voice is heard in Ramah, weeping and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children and refusing to be comforted, because they are no more." The return to Nazareth. After Herod died, an angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt and said, "Get up, take the child and his mother and go to the land of Israel, for those who were trying to take the child's life are dead." So he got up, took the child and his mother, and went to the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus was reigning in Judea in place of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there. Having been warned in a dream, he withdrew to the district of Galilee, and he went and lived in a town called Nazareth. So was fulfilled what was said through the prophets, that he would be called a Nazarene. This is the word of the Lord.
Very good morning to all of you gathered here, and good to see all of you here. When I got up on yesterday morning, at 7 o'clock, before 7 o'clock, I never imagined that I'll be preaching in Klang Wesley. A few minutes later, after 7, I got a WhatsApp from Reverend Gauri stating that she's not well and asking whether I can replace her as a preacher this weekend. So the big question is, if I was preaching in KL Wesley today at this time, the answer is no, I can't replace her. But I am not preaching in KL Wesley this weekend. The next 2 weekends, I will be preaching. So frantically, she also wanted an answer fairly quickly, because if I said no, she's got to think of somebody else. And so what happened is I WhatsApped my pastor in charge. Since going to KL Wesley, I'm number 2 associate pastor. Pastor in charge is Reverend Andrew Lim. And I know he's up because we all have prayer meeting at 7:30 on the Saturday morning. That's the normal time for prayer meeting. He didn't read my WhatsApp immediately. So I called him up. I said, "I'm so sorry, can you read my WhatsApp and reply me?" And then within a few minutes, he replied me and said, "Okay, go ahead." That does not mean that I've got no responsibilities in KL Wesley this weekend. Yesterday, there was a church wedding, so Jane and I went for the wedding. We were a bit concerned because, there are many roadblocks in KL yesterday. We also checked with other church staff, and it's good. They gave us a route that seemed to be able to get into KL Wesley. But nonetheless, when I took the route, still I met with 2 police roadblocks. I brought my letter that was signed last year during the lockdown to state that I'm a pastor of KL Wesley. So I showed it to the policeman, that I need to go to church. In fact, I was dressed in my clerical shirt as well. And they were quite adamant that I cannot go through the blocks, but they were very friendly. They actually pointed which road I can take, and eventually I was able to reach the church. Then came back in the afternoon, frantically looking for a message. Now, all my old sermon notes are in my office in KL Wesley, so it's a good thing that I was down there. I cannot preach a fresh sermon within few hours. That's not me. I need many hours to actually prepare for a message. So came here yesterday for evening service, and then today at 10 o'clock, this is a pre-arrangement a few weeks ago, I am chairing a local conference of JB Wesley. Now, I know I got no time to go back home and chair it, so I want to thank Pelita for actually arranging one of the rooms in church. So that's why I brought my laptop, all that. So unfortunately, I cannot meet up with all of you after service. I got to rush and chair this local conference. So I thought I better tell you all now, otherwise you think I'm very rude, come and preach and run away, okay? So that's not the case. 10 o'clock, I got to chair a local conference. And this evening, there is an evening service at KL Wesley. I remember many years ago, and it's interesting that I tend to remember a lot of things when I was a new pastor. And one of my colleagues gave me advice. Whenever you leave a church on transfer, don't go back to the worship service for 1 year. So I said, why 1 year, like that? Unless there is a funeral or wedding and you know the people. Now, I want to say that at that time I didn't quite understand, but now I understand very well. It is always good to give a kind of period of a year so that the new pastor coming in will be able to settle, and people who want to connect with the old pastor don't connect for the wrong reasons, okay? Anyway, today is an unscheduled preaching. Pastor Gauri has already invited me to preach somewhere in the middle of this year, and that is a scheduled preaching. The title for today's message, which I say is one of the messages that I preached recently in KL Wesley, is There Will Be a New Season of Stability. Let's come before the Lord in prayer today. And so, Lord, even as we come to your word, Lord, we pray that you prepare our hearts and minds. And Lord, that we know that you are the one who leads and guides us in this year ahead. Lord, be with us, Lord, this morning. We surrender ourselves unto your hands in Jesus' name. Amen. How has life changed since March 2020? March 2020, I remember very vividly because as the pastor of this church, it was my last year here in Klang Wesley. My dad, who has passed away for many years now, related stories to me, and I remember these. For example, he said when he was 11 years old, he was on holiday in Sri Lanka, those days called Ceylon. And that was the time the Japanese invaded Malaya. So his own father sent a telex to his uncle, because he was staying in the uncle's place, don't come back to Malaysia because of the Japanese invasion. And so my dad missed those years of Japanese occupation in Malaya and only came back thereafter. However, my grandfather, my uncles and aunties and all were here during that time. I remember in my first parish, this will be like 25 years or more, one or two of the church members who have all now passed away, they related to me stories of the Japanese occupation in Malaya. So from that time, World War II, which is a very long time ago, until March of 2020, things have been relatively stable in Malaysia. I know there was the May 13 incident. I know also in the 1970s, my father did share with me that it appeared that communism was coming down towards Malaysia. moving into nations like Vietnam, etc. And some of his friends actually decided to emigrate overseas during that time. But as we all know, thankfully, the communists did not come and conquer Thailand or Malaysia during that time. So things have been relatively peaceful, but oh, how things have changed since March 2020. And I just put up some statistics here. In the year 2020, right until the month of September, the daily cases of COVID-19 was below 150. Now, some of us will forget, today we have seen, or last year we have seen very high numbers, but even till 2020, that was the case. By the end of the year of 2020, the numbers have gone up significantly to 2,525. And then we look on in last year, 2021, I put some statistics there. In January, it was 5,000 plus. In June, 6,000 plus. Just imagine, for about 5 months, the numbers just went up slightly. But from June to September, the numbers really shot up. Particularly if you notice, August 26th, that was the highest number of daily cases, almost 25,000. But we thank the Lord that right until the end of the year, the numbers went down until 3,000 plus. And if you have been following the news, the numbers are hovering between 3,000 to 4,000. In fact, the last few days, the numbers are slightly up. We also find that in terms of last year, with the Delta variant coming to play, that people that we know actually passed away. Now, it's interesting that when I went to a new church, KL Wesley, as we know, last year, many months were locked down, I remember I went to church office first week of January. By the 13th of January, I remember that date very well, the country has declared cannot go to work from home. I remember one pastor, his wife is KL Wesley, he's also originally KL Wesley. They contacted Reverend Andrew Lim and said, hey, we heard got locked down on January 13. January 12, can we have our wedding? Very fast one. And I know Pastor Andrew worked overnight, to get all the certificate ready and all that. And they actually got married one day before the lockdown. So last year, the SOP allowed pastors to conduct wake and funeral service. And I'm sure it's the same with Reverend Gauri here. Just imagine the first time you get to meet families in church is at the funeral parlor, at the wake service, at the funeral service. Also last year, I remember church members used to WhatsApp, please pray for so-and-so down with COVID. And sometimes they pass away because of COVID. In terms of our Methodist pastors, several passed away, including from Chinese Annual Conference and our Trinity Annual Conference. Some of you may remember Pastor Ravi from the WMCK. Apparently, he was on duty conducting, I think, a funeral service. And unfortunately, some people came down with COVID after that, and eventually he passed away. We also find that the vaccination rollout has taken place very rapidly in Malaysia. And some of us initially, because the government did not make an announcement about foreigners, just imagine we are Malaysian citizens, we got blue my card, we are given the appointment. But thankfully, the government made a decision under Khairi heading this. All foreigners living in Malaysia can be vaccinated. So I remember our maid who has been with us for 16 years, Rosalinda. I took her to Setia City Convention Center, and it was a massive vaccination program for foreigners. In fact, that day we had to wait about 4 or 5 hours to get the whole vaccination done. And I noticed some foreigners didn't even bring their passport with them for whatever reason. They only brought a photostat of their front page. And yet the health officers there vaccinated them. And we are thankful that the government did take care of foreigners as well. It was a slow recovery for our economy, as we all know. Travel restrictions, much can be said. Even till today, they wanted to encourage Langkawi to be a place where tourists can come back, for example, but because of the new Omicron variant, apparently tourists are also reluctant to go overseas for holidays. Church activities, we find that small groups or cell groups are affected. Actually, technically, till today, cell groups are not allowed to meet in homes. But I do know some small cell groups, maybe they're only 5 or 6 people, they can meet. And I noticed that the authorities, they are actually more relaxed. Even for the Chinese New Year SOPs, we note that reunion dinners are allowed, but they said it's among family members. My best 2 months of last year were the months of November and December, because the church doors were open and people started coming back to church, although the numbers were very small. And then it gradually built up. And on Christmas Day, because Pastor Andrew had an ingenious way of using 2 halls, the main hall and the old sanctuary, and there is a wire that links up both halls. So with the utilization of both halls, we had something like 450 people coming for Christmas Day. But I can guarantee you the following Sunday, we don't have that kind of numbers, okay? It's the same story that people come to church for Christmas service. So how now? What does 2022 behold for us? If you look at the graph, worldwide graph of COVID, with the Omicron cases coming in the last 1 month or so, the daily cases right throughout the world suddenly spiked up. If you look at the graph, it's like suddenly just rose so high, about 3 times more. But if you compare to the number of daily deaths, people dying, the number is stabilized. So what's the conclusion? That the Omicron variant, although people get it, it is not so deadly. People are not dying from it. Nonetheless, we have to ensure that we keep all the SOPs. We need to continue to trust in God in this year 2022, that it will be a new season of stability. But of course, we are careful. We follow the SOPs. I'm glad that as I came in, we still have to register under My Sejahtera. That's a requirement by the government. I remember talking to my sister who stays in Western Australia. Western Australia is one of the parts of Australia that have very, very few cases. In fact, when they just have 1 or 2 cases, the authorities will immediately post a lockdown for 3 days or 5 days because they're very, very careful. So when I talked to her, she said, yeah, no problem, go out, no need to wear face masks. Go to church, no need to wear face masks. Everywhere, no need to wear face masks. Then I was thinking, in Malaysia and many nations, wherever we go, we have to wear face masks. It's a time to bless the less fortunate. And I wonder if we know there are people who are less fortunate than us. I wonder whether you think maybe I'll bless them with a box of face masks, or maybe a packet of face masks, or maybe hand sanitizer. Because these are things that already have become a norm in our society. Let's look at the passage for today. God directed Joseph in times of trouble. Now it's interesting that Joseph had already obeyed God's direction in a dream about marrying Mary. Remember Matthew chapter 1. Joseph was a good man. He wanted to quietly divorce. Okay, in that context, a betrothal engagement, if you break it, it is tantamount to divorce. So God sent the angel and said, don't. His name will be called Emmanuel. You marry Mary. That's part of God's plan. So Joseph was the earthly father of Jesus. Matthew's gospel concentrates on Joseph. Luke's gospel concentrates on Mary. Sometimes we remember Mary more in the birth narratives. You know, her humility, willingness to be God's vessel to give birth to the Son of God. But sometimes we forget that Joseph is outstanding. You know, as a father, go back to Matthew chapter 1 and 2 and just read again about Joseph. He was truly a sterling man and outstanding. And we think in Genesis, namesake Joseph, thousands of years earlier, 1/4 of Genesis is devoted to the story of Joseph. Just imagine, from creation right until Joseph's story, 1/4 of Genesis is devoted to him. He's a man who had dreams. He can interpret dreams. Just imagine, he's not even from the lineage of Jesus, because Jesus is from Judah. That was his brother. But the focus was so much on his life. Everything in Joseph's story talked about his willingness to obey God. Now, another very interesting fact, his forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, every one of them in their stories, God talked to them directly, first person. Except when he came to Joseph. We find that God does not talk to Joseph in the first person. So sometimes in our lives, you say, oh, you know, that church member, the church leader, looks like God talks to her, you know, directly, like a direct line with God. But remember the story of Joseph. Joseph was willing to obey God every step of the journey. And so we find that Joseph was brought down so low to the prison cell. And even when the butler is supposed to present his case, he forgot about it. And then suddenly he remembered about Joseph. And then we know the story, from so low he was elevated to number 2 in Egypt, a position of power. And that's where we see Joseph's character coming out. Because when his brothers came and begged for food, he could have taken revenge on them very easy. You are at position number 2 in Egypt. You have all the authority to do that. But he didn't. Coming back to Joseph in the New Testament, Joseph, the father of Jesus, the earthly father of Jesus, he simply obeyed God. When the angel of the Lord came to him and told him what God wants him to do, he obeyed it. Contrast to Zechariah, Luke chapter 1, father of John the Baptist. The angel came to him. He's a priest. He was doing his priestly duties in the temple. The angel came to him, and the angel told him, your prayers have been answered. Now that's a very important statement there, because he was praying in his heart, I want a son. And then the angel elaborated to him that your son is actually part of God's prophetic plan to send the messenger to prepare the way of the Lord. And the angel said everything to him so clearly. And what does the Bible say? Zechariah asked the angel, are you really sure? I'm so old, you know. My wife also so old. And immediately the angel said, I am Gabriel, and I stand in the very presence of God. How dare you question the words of God? And before Zechariah can say, I'm so sorry, please forgive me, the angel declared, you are going to be mute or dumb until the time that your son is born. And you read that passage, until the naming of John the Baptist, he couldn't speak. So the people knew that something divine had happened. And then he spoke to say, no, the son's name must be John. So just imagine, Joseph was simple obedience. Zechariah questioned God's prophecy over him. The angel of the Lord told Joseph to take Jesus and Mary and to flee to Egypt because Jesus' life was under threat. Now again, something fascinating. We all know the story of the wise men, the passage before this. Did you notice in the wise man's story that Joseph is not mentioned? Only Mary and Jesus is mentioned. Just imagine, these wise men came from afar to worship Jesus, the newborn king, and looks like Joseph is not around. But then when trouble comes, Joseph is mentioned. Sometimes fathers feel like that, When things go smoothly, the credit all go to the mother and the children. When things go wrong, the fathers come into attention because they have to take decision for the family. So all is not well. God had already warned the wise men not to go back to Herod and to take another route. So we would think that all is well, but no. Now God sends the angel to warn Joseph. Remember that fleeing to Egypt happened in Genesis. Abraham and Sarai fled to Egypt, Genesis 12:10. Jacob and his sons had to go down to Egypt to beg for food. Judea and the borders of Egypt were something like 200 miles apart. In the first century, Alexandria was in Egypt. It was a thriving city. In fact, apart from Rome, it was the second most important city in the Roman Empire. We thank the Lord for the child narratives in Matthew and Luke that authenticate the humanness of Jesus and the vital role of obedience by the head of the family. Now, for those of you who know me, because I was here for 12 years, so very often I emphasize the importance of the head of the family, knowing Jesus as Lord and Savior and making a commitment to Him. In fact, there are one or two people told me that before getting married to their wife-to-be, and now wife, the wife outrightly told, unless you are obedient to Jesus and you follow after Jesus, I'm not interested in you. That's a very bold declaration. And of course, when the husband tells me the story, he agrees, he concurs. It's not that, he pretends that he will obey. So we find that Mark's gospel begins in the beginning of the gospel of Jesus Christ, Son of God, and then moves on to the adult life of Jesus. John's gospel begins with a beautiful prologue. And then in John 1:14, it says, the Word became flesh and tabernacled among us, and we beheld His glory, the glory of the one and only Son of God. But Matthew and Luke choose to see the humanness of Jesus, the birth narratives. We thank the Lord for giving us birth narratives. How many of you remember the modern Christmas song, Mary, Did You Know? Mary, Did You Know? How about upstairs? Any of you remember this song, Mary, Did You Know? Okay. In this song, the lyrics go like this. The songwriter writes these lyrics. Did you know that your baby boy has come to make you new? This child that you delivered will soon deliver you. There's a play on the word deliver. So Mary gives birth to the child, but this child is going to deliver her and the whole of humanity from their sin. Again in the song, did you know that your baby boy has walked where angels trod. And when you kissed your little baby, you kissed the face of God. Wow, you know, when I hear these words, my hair can stand on end. You know why? Because in the Old Testament, Moses wanted to see the face of God. He told God, I want to see your face. God says, no way, you see my face, you die. So God says, I'll hide you in the cleft of the rock, and I'll pass by you, and you will see my back. That's the very most I will reveal myself to you. And now, God has become Emmanuel, God with us. Joseph was not the biological father of Jesus, but he knew as the earthly father of Jesus, he is very responsible for Mary and Jesus. The Bible tells us later that Mary and Joseph have their own children, okay? But when Jesus was born, or when he was young, it was only Mary and Jesus. Fathers and husbands, are you responsible for the well-being of your wife and children? And let me emphasize, not only financial well-being. So many fathers think that my responsibility is only for the financial well-being. That is one small aspect of responsibility. It covers a wide area. Your wife and children look up to you for leadership in the family. They look up to you for friendship. And especially when they become teenagers, they look up to the father even more for spiritual leadership. Those fathers who have got teenage children, or once upon a time you have, afterwards you can WhatsApp me and say, I fully agree with you. Yes, Joseph was responsible for Mary and Jesus by being obedient to God's word. Could Jesus have died as a toddler and derailed the salvation plan of God that was destined for him to die on the cross? Now, this is a bit of a speculative question. What if Joseph did not flee to Egypt? What if Herod's army men came and killed Jesus as a baby or toddler? But this question is still valid whether Jesus was a baby, toddler, child, teenager, or adult. And let me elaborate. In Luke chapter 4, verse 29 and 30, when Jesus ministered to the people at Nazareth, his own hometown, the people were furious at Jesus. And they took him out to the cliff, and they wanted to throw him down and kill him. But the Bible said he just walked through them. Again, in John chapter 8, verses 58 and 59, Jesus declared to the people, before Abraham was, I am. Now, if you're a Jewish person, you understand what Jesus is saying. He said, I am the great I am. I am far greater than Father Abraham. I created Father Abraham. And the people understood, because you read the next verse, they took up stones. They wanted to kill him. But Jesus escaped. Even when narrating about the harrowing parts of Jesus' life, like in today's passage, Matthew proved that Jesus was indeed the promised Messiah by fulfilling the Old Testament prophecy. Number one, out of Egypt I have called my son, taken from Hosea chapter 11, verse 1. And again, it's an allusion to Moses running away from Egypt. In Hosea chapter 11, verse 1, Israel is known as the Lord's youthful son. Number two, a voice was heard in Ramah, weeping and loud lamentations. Rachel weeping for her children, refusing to be comforted. Again, this is taken from Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 35. Now, Ramah is only 8 kilometers north of Jerusalem. It was a path that the Babylonian armies captured and destroyed Jerusalem, captured the people, and were taking them into exile. And apparently in history, many people, Jewish people, were slaughtered in Ramah. Rachel, the favorite wife of Jacob, remember she has only 2 sons, Joseph and Benjamin, figuratively represents the mother of Israel. Back in Genesis, Rachel named her son Ben-Oni, which means son of my sorrows. Why? Because she was going to die at childbirth. The father went and renamed him as Benjamin. It is estimated that King Herod killed about 30 to 40 baby boys under 2 in Bethlehem. Let me go to some application. The Lord alone will minister to us when we are fearful. He will lead us to safety. Psalm 23 verse 4. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Judea may pose a threat, but there is still a Galilee. Remember, God warned Joseph to take his family and go to Galilee. Archelaus replaced his father, King Herod, as the ruler of Judea. Now, Josephus, a historian, first century historian, he writes about King Herod. He said that King Herod died at the age of 69. He died a loathsome, feverish illness. Now, today, good to see Joshua Moody here. I remember a few Christmases ago, he was on the stage somewhere here acting the part of King Herod, almost going to die at that time. And so his evil son, Archelaus, took over from him. He did not receive the title of king. In fact, after a few years, Rome removed him from power because they had very bad reports of him. This was the 3rd time that God directed Joseph in a dream. And this time Joseph was to go to Galilee. Now there's a quotation there in Matthew's Gospel, he shall be called a Nazarene. But if you go back to the Old Testament, and scholars have searched the whole Old Testament, you don't have a direct quotation from the OT. Now some scholars said the Hebrew word for branch is netzer. And netzer sounds similar to Nazareth, or a person from Nazareth. And this is an allusion to Isaiah 11 verse 1, a shoot or branch from the stump of Jesse will come forth and bear fruit. And you read Isaiah 11, everything is messianic about this passage. So what's the lesson we can learn? Each time God gave enough guidance for the next step. You look at the story of Joseph, each time God gave guidance for the next step. And each time Joseph obeyed God. Now, I'm not familiar with KL. So last year, when I had to go to, people having wake service or whatever reason of visitation, I got to use Waze. Somehow on my smartphone, Waze does not work very well. I'm so glad I have Google Maps. Because when Waze does not work, I have to use Google Maps. Google Maps, 100% reliable on my smartphone. Anyway, I also like Waze. Sometimes at the red light, I don't recommend you do this. I'm very impatient. I want to know which route Waze is going to take me to get to the destination. So I swipe, Waze, swipe. Okay, car stationary, not moving. Swipe. Oh, like this. Oh, okay. Now, God is not like that. God is not like giving you direction until the end of 2022. He gives you sufficient direction for the next step. Application. There needs to be times of peace and stability in our life for steady growth. Moses needed to go to Midian. He needed to get married. He needed to be a shepherd for 40 years before God called him at the burning bush. David needed to be a shepherd, the mundane duty of looking after sheep, before God called him to slay Goliath. In 1 Timothy chapter 2, verses 1 and 2, the Bible tells us to pray for people in authority. Pray that we may lead peaceful and quiet lives, that we may be godly and dignified. Children need security. Children need to see the father and mother in peace with one another. They do not want father and mother to be quarreling all the time. And that creates an unstable situation. And so fathers and mothers, remember, 99% of our quarrels is because I want it my way. That is the bottom line. I want it my way, not your way. Children want to see unity among their parents. And children want to see their parents solidly emplacing Jesus at the center of their marriage and family life. And so again, as I look back at my parents, my mom is still with me. Her condition is fairly the same compared to like the last 1-2 years. My dad passed away many years ago. But even as my sister and I were growing up, we can see consistency. Whatever they said, they practiced. Whatever they portrayed to people on Sunday, so nice, 2 hours on Sunday, you can portray to people that your family is doing so well. Go and talk to the children. The other 6.5 days of the week, and maybe it's a different story. However, when we are obedient to God's mission, we may be asked to endure suffering like Jesus and the disciples. So yes, we want peace and stability, but sometimes God will call us on that road of suffering. I know my time is almost up. I need to go for my Zoom meeting shortly. I was wondering what to conclude. And I know it's a bit unusual, but I was reminded by God when I was 14 years old at a youth conference in Central in KL. And the last thing in my mind was to come up for altar call. The first thing in my mind was to go out and play badminton with my friends or football. God called me. And so my ending will be like this: the call to become a pastor, and specifically a pastor in our annual conference. Now, when I left my church in Ipoh and Reverend Jayakumar took over from me, he was only there for 4 years. And in that 4 years, he spotted 3 church staff. He encouraged them. I know this story because I talked to Pastor Gauri and she's one of them. He brought them in his car all the way to Penang to enroll in the Bible college there. And these 3 church staff are now itinerant pastors, including Reverend Gauri. I remember reading the story of a pastor who is well retired now. And this story is like more than 50 years old. And he went and talked to his own dad about becoming a pastor. And, like many fathers, there could be some reluctance, some blockage there. But the father said these words, and I was reading it in the souvenir program. The father said, at least, now again, one more time, more than 50 years ago, he said, at least pastors and teachers are very well respected in society. I almost burst out laughing when I read that. You know why? Because today is a different story. If that's the case today, there'll be many Christian teachers, there are many pastors in the ministry. The fact is that we are very short of itinerant pastors. Last year, one of the ladies in KL Wesley, she became a local pastor. She's still working for her master's degree, and then she will convert to become itinerant pastor. A few years ago, somebody from the seminary, Bible college student, was very eager to talk to me about this one topic. And when he came and talked to me, he said, among my friends, we always say pastor's life is very terrible, very difficult and very terrible. How? Please share with me. Now, I got two choices. One choice is to say, I agree with you, very terrible, very, very terrible, very suffering. Or I got the other choice of being positive. And so I chose the choice of being positive. And I said, number one, the retirement benefits are out of this world. Now, I think you all know me for more than 12 years. It was tongue-in-cheek, okay? Out of this world means heaven, okay? Not earth, heaven. So all the rewards are in heaven. So the retirement benefits are out of this world. Number two, if we take our role seriously as a pastor, we are God's powerful agent of helping people to mature in their Christian faith. And I'm not just talking about adult generation, I'm talking about children, I'm talking about youth generation. And that one money cannot buy. I remember, again, many years ago, I'm a new pastor. One of my senior colleagues talked to me. He said, there are some people in church giving him a really hard time. So every Sunday, he opened the newspaper, job vacancy. He was thinking of going back to his secular job. Until one day, the wife saw him doing it. The wife said, "What on earth are you doing?" Then she realized what he's doing. Then she said, "I want to tell you one thing. The half a dozen people in church who give you a headache, remember there are scores and scores and scores of people who accept you as a pastor and want to follow after you. Remember that." He said after that Saturday, he never turned to the job vacancy section anymore. And isn't that true, my dear friends? There are hundreds and hundreds of people who want to be obedient to the shepherd of the church. So let me close in prayer because I really need to run upstairs. Lord, even as we come today, Lord, we want to remember, Lord, this whole area of the shortage of pastors, especially itinerant pastors. Lord, we never underestimate the power of the Holy Spirit. Because I know, Lord, when I was 14 years old, you called me at that time. And today, Lord, I pray that the seeds that are scattered will fall on the hearts of some of the people here, or some of them who are online this morning. And pray, Lord, that there'll be more people who will be obedient to this calling. Lord, even as we remember the life of Joseph, we want to remember his obedience, that he followed after you step by step of the journey. And so, Lord, in this year ahead, we ask, Lord, that we will follow after you step by step. Although we cannot see what the end of the year holds for us, but Lord, we want to trust in you. And we want to receive your word this morning. We ask and pray in Jesus' name. Amen.